The red seal snapped beneath Sergeant Russell Grady's thumb. "Don't open that." The voice behind him was calm, not loud, not desperate, not pleading, calm. Grady turned slowly, the torn edge of the envelope still between his fingers. Camille Turner stood beside the patrol car, with her wrists secured behind her back. The Georgia sun had been beating down on the parking lot for nearly half an hour, turning the pavement into a sheet of heat. Sweat ran along her temple and disappeared beneath the collar of her light blue sweater. But she wasn't crying. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't asking for mercy. She was looking at the envelope. Grady gave a short laugh. "You've been saying that for 20 minutes because you haven't listened." Officer Tommy Marsh stood several feet away, his body camera blinking red against his uniform. He looked from Camille to the envelope, then back to Grady. "Sergeant," he said carefully, "maybe we should stop for a second." Grady didn't even look at him. "Stay out of it." Camille noticed the younger officer's hesitation. She had seen that look before. Not cruelty, not agreement, but uncertainty. The look of someone who knew a situation was going too far and hadn't yet decided whether courage was worth the consequences. She turned her attention back to Grady. "You already checked my license." Grady's jaw tightened. "You have no warrants." She continued, "No outstanding tickets. You searched my car, you found nothing illegal. You don't get to lecture me." "I'm not lecturing you." "Then what are you doing, giving you a chance to stop?" For a moment, nobody spoke. Behind them, patrol vehicles sat beneath the bright afternoon sky. A few people leaving the county building had slowed down to watch. They weren't close enough to hear every word, but they could see the handcuffs. They could see the packet. They could see the young black woman standing there, while a uniformed officer held something she had repeatedly told him not to touch. Grady looked at the people watching. Then he looked back at Camille. "You think because you know a few words about the law, you can tell me how to do my job?" Camille shook her head no. "I think you should remember why you became a police officer in the first place." That landed differently. Marsh lowered his eyes. Grady's expression hardened. "You don't know anything about me." "Maybe not," Camille said. "But I know what authority is supposed to look like." Grady stepped closer. "And what does it look like?" "It looks like someone who doesn't need to prove he's powerful." The parking lot seemed to grow quieter. For a second, even Grady had nothing to say. Camille wasn't challenging every police officer in America. She wasn't claiming that every officer was corrupt. She wasn't saying that wearing a badge made someone her enemy. She was saying something much simpler. A badge carried responsibility. And responsibility meant knowing when you had the power to hurt someone and choosing not to abuse it. For years, black women had learned to measure their words carefully. During encounters with authority, Camille knew that one angry sentence could become disrespect. One sudden movement could become resistance. One attempt to defend herself could become another accusation. So she stayed composed, not because she was weak, because she understood that dignity did not require shouting. Grady lifted the envelope. "You expect me to believe this belongs to you?" "Yes, then what's inside?" "That's confidential." He smiled. "Confidential?" "Yes, from me. Unless you have lawful authority to open it." Marsh glanced at the seal. There was something official about it. Not just the red wax, but the markings around the edge. The classification stamp, the formal lettering. He had seen enough government paperwork to know that this wasn't an ordinary envelope. "Sergeant," he said again, "we should probably verify." Grady snapped his eyes toward him. "I said I've got it." Marsh fell silent. Camille watched him carefully. Then she looked at Grady one last time. Her voice remained steady. "Put the packet down." Grady held it between both hands. "You're in handcuffs, I know. You're sitting on a hot parking lot. I know, and you're still giving me instructions." "No," Camille said. "I'm giving you a warning." Grady stared at her. Then his thumb pressed beneath the remaining portion of the red seal. 45 minutes earlier, Camille Turner had walked out of the Richwood County Administrative Building, carrying the same sealed packet against her chest. The afternoon heat was already heavy. There was almost no shade in the parking lot, only rows of cars shimmering beneath the Georgia sun. Camille adjusted the strap of her black backpack and walked toward her silver sedan, an older car with faded paint and a small crack in the lower corner of the windshield. She looked ordinary. That was the first mistake Sergeant Grady made. He saw the old car. He saw a young black woman carrying an official-looking packet, and he decided the two things didn't belong together. Grady had spent 19 years wearing a badge. He knew how quickly an ordinary encounter could become complicated. But somewhere along the way, he had stopped seeing the badge as a responsibility and started seeing it as permission. Officer Tommy Marsh sat beside him in the patrol SUV. "What's wrong?" Marsh asked. Grady didn't answer immediately. He watched Camille place the packet on the passenger seat. "Something's off," he finally said. Marsh looked through the windshield. "She hasn't done anything." "I didn't say she did." "Then why are we watching her?" "Grady started the engine because I want to know what she's carrying." Marsh hesitated. He had learned that there were questions you could ask your training officer, and questions you couldn't. This felt like one of the second kind. The patrol SUV rolled forward. Camille had just started her car when the lights appeared behind her, red-blue flashing across her mirrors. She took a slow breath and pulled back into park. Her hands went immediately to the steering wheel. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't make any sudden movement. She waited. Grady approached the driver's side with one hand resting near his belt. "License and registration, good afternoon," Officer Camille said. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" Grady held out his hand, license and registration. She gave them to him. He looked at the license, then the registration, then the license again. Everything matched. Everything was current. There was no obvious violation. Marsh watched from behind him. Grady's eyes moved toward the passenger seat. The packet was still there. "What is that, a document?" "Hand it over." Camille looked at him. "No." Grady's expression changed. It was subtle, but Marsh noticed. "What did you say?" "I said no." "You're refusing a lawful order. You haven't explained why you're asking for it." Grady leaned closer to the open window. "I don't need you questioning every instruction I give you." Camille remained respectful. "I understand that you're an officer. I'm asking you to tell me what I've done wrong." There was no attitude in her voice. No insult, no raised tone. Just a simple question, and somehow that made Grady angrier. "Step out of the car." Camille paused. "Am I under arrest?" "Step out." "Am I free to leave?" Grady didn't answer. Instead, he opened the passenger door. Camille's eyes immediately went to the packet. "Officer, please don't touch that." Grady picked it up. It was heavier than he expected. He turned it over. A wide red seal crossed the flap. There were formal markings printed across the front, but most of the wording was impossible to read. From where Camille stood, Grady ran his thumb across the seal. "Where do you get this?" "It was given to me." "By who?" "I can't discuss that." Grady gave a short laugh. "Can't discuss it?" "No." He looked at the old sedan, then at her clothes, then at the packet. His mind had already decided what the facts meant. "You expect me to believe you walked out of a government building, carrying sealed documents, got into this car, and just happened to refuse to tell me what they are?" Camille looked directly at him. "Yes." Marsh stepped closer. "Sergeant, her registration is clean." Grady ignored him. Camille noticed the younger officer's discomfort. "Officer Marsh," she said quietly, "you're recording this, correct?" Marsh glanced at the red light on his body camera. "Yes." Grady looked over his shoulder. "Marsh." "Yes, Sergeant." "Go run her plate." Marsh walked toward the patrol SUV. The system returned almost immediately. Clean registration, no warrants. No criminal history, no outstanding citations, nothing. He stared at the screen for another second, almost hoping something would appear. Nothing did. He walked back. "She's clean." Grady looked at Camille, then at the sealed packet for the first time. The situation had become a problem he couldn't solve with a simple traffic violation. But instead of letting her go, he made a decision that would change everything. "I smell marijuana," he said. Grady's words hung in the hot afternoon air. "I smell marijuana." Camille looked at him for a long second. There was no fear in her expression now, not because she didn't understand the seriousness of the situation, but because she understood something Grady didn't. He had just crossed the line. "There is no marijuana in my car," she said. "That's for me to determine. You searched the vehicle. I'm going to search it again." "On what legal basis?" Grady stepped closer. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Camille looked toward Marsh. The younger officer was standing beside the patrol SUV, clearly uncomfortable. "Officer Marsh," she said, "you know the car is clean." Marsh swallowed. "Yes." Grady turned sharply. "What did you say?" "I said we didn't find anything." Grady stared at him for a moment. Marsh looked as though he wanted to say more. Then he looked down. That small moment mattered. Because sometimes courage doesn't begin with a dramatic speech. Sometimes it begins with one person refusing to pretend that something wrong is normal. Grady reached for his handcuffs. Hands behind your back. Camille didn't move. I haven't resisted you, I didn't say you did. Then why are you handcuffing me? Because you're becoming difficult. She slowly placed her hands behind her back. The cuffs clicked shut. She winced when Grady tightened. The metal pressed against her wrists as she sat down on the curb. The pavement was burning beneath her. Her coat was dusty. Sweat darkened the back of her sweater, but she kept her posture straight. She refused to let humiliation become her identity. Grady searched the car again. The glove box, the center console. Under the seats, the trunk, nothing. No drugs, no weapon. No stolen property, nothing that justified what had happened. The only thing left was the packet. Grady picked it up. Camille watched him. "Sergeant," she said, "I am asking you one last time." He looked at her. "Don't open it." He smiled. "Why?" "Because you don't understand what you're holding." "Then tell me I can't exactly." He turned the packet over. "Looks like you're hiding something." Camille shook her head. "No. I'm protecting something." That answer stopped him for half a second. Then his pride took over. He placed the packet on the hood of the sedan. The metal was so hot that the paper almost seemed to vibrate against it. Grady ran his thumb along the red seal. Marsh watched. "Sergeant, maybe we should call someone from the county office." Grady didn't respond. "Sergeant, I said I've got it." Camille closed her eyes briefly. Not because she was giving up, because she knew what was coming. Grady pulled at the seal. It tore. The sound was small, almost insignificant. But sometimes the biggest mistakes begin with the smallest sounds. The packet opened. Several thick documents slid onto the hood. One page fell to the ground. Grady picked it up. His eyes moved across the first line, then stopped. His face changed. Marsh noticed immediately. "What is it?" Grady didn't answer. He turned the page. There was a federal case number at the top. Below it were photographs, dates, names, and references to previous complaints. Marsh leaned closer. Sergeant Grady's hands tightened around the paper. One name appeared again and again. His name, Russell Grady. He flipped through the pages faster. There were records of traffic stops, witness statements, internal complaints, photographs, times, and locations. And then he saw something that made his stomach drop. A photograph of himself during an earlier traffic stop. The image showed his patrol vehicle. The date was visible, so was the time. Everything was documented. Camille watched his face. "You should have left the seal intact." Grady looked at her. "Who are you?" For the first time, Camille allowed herself a small, tired smile. "Someone who gave you a chance to do the right thing." Sirens suddenly sounded beyond the parking lot. Grady turned toward the entrance. 2 black SUVs were approaching. Then another people stepped out carrying federal credentials. Marsh stared at them. Sergeant Grady didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on Camille. She wasn't smiling because she had defeated him. She was smiling because the truth had finally been given room to speak. And that is something worth remembering. A badge can be one of the most honorable symbols in America. When the person wearing it understands that power is not permission. Good officers protect people, respect the law, and know that every person they stop is a human being, deserving of dignity. And black women, like Camille, don't have to surrender their voice to prove they respect authority. Sometimes courage looks like staying calm, knowing your rights and refusing to be intimidated. The investigators walked toward them. One of them looked directly at Grady. "Sergeant Russell Grady." Grady swallowed. "Yes. We need to speak with you about the evidence you just opened." Camille looked toward the camera. And maybe that's the part of this story worth talking about most. Not just what happened to Camille, not just what Grady did, but what we expect from the people entrusted with a badge. If you were watching this happen, what would you have done in Camille's position? Would you have stayed silent, demanded a supervisor, or calmly stood your ground like she did? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. And if you want more stories about ordinary people who find the courage to stand up when powerful people cross the line, tell me what kind of story you want me to bring you next. Because sometimes one person's decision to say no is the first step toward making an entire system answer for its actions.